friends. This is the Be Real Babe podcast, a place where your average babes come together to talk about life stresses, messes, and successes. A place where being yourself is the ultimate goal, where your opinion, your story, and your individual experience matters. Join me, your host B, and my guests for real and raw talks every week, laying it all out there so we can all help each other learn more, grow deeper, and evolve collectively. Now keep in mind, as a disclaimer, no one here is an expert and no one is giving any advice. This is strictly our opinions, thoughts, feelings, and for entertainment purposes only. Now with that being said, it's time. So grab your drink, grab your joint, and let's jump right in. Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Be Real Babe podcast. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for stopping by the show today. I hope that you have a good time. And if you're a returning listener, watcher, supporter, thank you guys so much from the bottom of my heart for coming back time and time again. For those that don't know me, my name is Brandy. I am the host of the show, and today you guys were on episode 213, Being Real with Open Minds. I know, tell me about it. I know I'm so good at titling episodes, you guys. It's unreal. But what a perfect combination. We're having Christopher back on. I think this is for third, fourth time at this point. I don't know. He's almost going to be claimed as a co-host very soon here. But I'm so excited, you guys. As usual, it was a fire conversation. We touch on every topic that we possibly can in an hour and a half. And I honestly think we could probably go on for like 3 or 4 hours. But, you know, we got to stop things at sometimes. Not all good things. All good things sometimes do have to come to an end, but you guys are going to love this episode. But before we get onto it, I just want to remind you, if you are watching on Rumble, Apple, or Spotify, to turn on those notifications and leave me a review if you can. That helps me so much. And if you are looking for me on social media this year, you're going to find me on Instagram and TikTok only at the Be Real Babe podcast. As mentioned, guys, I have separated the show, so if you are looking for more internet drama or keeping up with Canada, that is now on the YouTube Be Real Babe show. You can find me over there, and the podcast is going to remain on Rumble, Spotify, and Apple. If you go back to episode 211, you will know why. For all those reasons, I'm not going to get into today, but I also want to take a second to say thank you guys so much, because today, as I'm recording, not as I launch, it will be 4 years that I launched my very first episode of the podcast. Back before I had video, back when I had a co-host, back when things were super different, and I was literally just sitting in my tiny room. I had some lights behind me, and I had one pink chair. And you guys never got to, maybe you guys got to see the pink chair, but the first 3 seasons, you guys didn't see me, but then season 4, we came out in video, and I have been here on Riverside ever since, so it's kind of almost like a 2-year anniversary of being on Riverside and video audio, and 4 years of running my mouth, and let me tell ya, I am quite the different babe that I was back in 2021 on March 1st. It's also my 4-year anniversary working for the company that I work for and love so much. And in 4 days time, it'll be me and my spouse's 8-year anniversary. So March, the beginning of March is always so great for me. We're getting into spring. The sun is coming back out. I'm not cutting my bangs or coloring them like winter depression told me I should. The sun is out. I now feel like I'm no longer dead inside. So I'm super excited to get started this season, because this season means spring and summertime. And I'm so excited, you guys. The amount of interviews I have booked for this season are incredible. So much real talk, so much goodness. But I am going to shut the fuck up, because this episode y'all want to get to right away. So again, thank you guys so much for the love and support. Let's go. All right, babes, it's time to get on to the show. And with me today, I have one of my favorite returning guests joining me. I'd like to welcome Christopher from Open Minds podcast back to the show. Hi, friend.
Brandy, before we begin, I just wanted to say, I think what you're doing for Canada is such a public good. The topics you cover, not only do we not hear about it, but I was having this conversation with a friend of mine, and you delve into topics that I feel are not marketed in true honesty, specifically with women.
Yeah.
And, as a woman yourself, I feel like you're doing such a public good. Even if people disagree with whatever, it's like, it's such a public good, what you're doing. So I just want to say thank you on behalf of Canadians. Like, it is such a good that you're doing for us.
Thank you. And that's so crazy, because I feel the exact same with you. That's why I think we blend so well together, because we see what each other's trying to do. And even through the hate comments, the shade, whatever we get, the unfollows, the, hey, I'm leaving, you're not aligned with me. Through all of that, we see what our mission is and what we're trying to do. And I think that's
Yeah.
why we vibe so well. That's why we're cheering each other on. That's why even
Yeah.
the little things that we're doing, like getting a new mic and putting your brand on it, like we see that, we understand how big that is for each other.
It's
So
huge. Yeah.
equally, thank you, dude, because like even though I'm doing this for women, I feel like you're doing this in the other side where it comes to politics and Canadians, and like not even just
Yeah.
politics, but just how Canadians are feeling and
Yeah.
trying to see what I kind of always feel like you kind of are like, in a sense, like the Brett Cooper of Canada in the way, if in the positive, where it's like you're reading
Yeah.
the comment section, you're asking questions, you're being as balanced as you can be and as unbiased, with the same sense being like, this is my personal opinion. And that's something I very much aspire to be. So equally, dude, thank you. Because I feel that's the same way. It's just like, and speaking about like men's rights and like what's going on and all of that. So like equally, and that's why I always get excited when we have it every like 6 months, and like time goes by so
It
quickly.
does.
I'm like, it
really
was
does.
6 months ago. Like, what?
I
We need to
know.
do this more often, but there's so much to do on both sides, right? So it's like, I'm
Yeah.
excited we're sitting down today and getting our 6-month catch up. And just as we were talking before, I really love how our names and our shows are different, but it's still kind of the same thing. So being real with open minds, I think that we've challenged each other, where you've challenged me to be more open-minded, to not be so like boxed in, where I feel like I've challenged you to speak your truth more and be honest in what your opinion was, and not be so afraid to put a little line in the sand in some things that matter to you. So yeah,
100%.
super stoked for today.
Yeah, and I feel like it's something that so many of us struggle with, the authenticity of, sharing an opinion that may be very different. In fact, actually, right before this conversation, a friend of mine called me about everything that's happening with Zelensky and Trump and Ukraine, and what's interesting is that my friend and I have very different opinions on it. It was so interesting listening to someone who looked at that conference, and he had a very different read than myself. And so I was like, this is interesting. It's actually the arena where this uncomfortableness needs to occur, because we're both learning from each other in a way.
Yes, yeah. And instead, I think the last 4 years has been very like, oh, you disagree, unfollow. And I'm fucking guilty.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I haven't done it, but I've come
Right,
very far. Like, I just posted today. Today is the 4 years since I posted my first episode of podcasting. Yeah, March 1st, 2021. Thank you. Yeah,
Let's
so it's been
this.
right. I was like, oh, what a fucking perfect day to celebrate.
Yes.
Like, it's really cool to look back and see how I very much changed, because I was a person at the beginning of the pandemic, especially being unvaccinated. It's like, oh, if you didn't agree with me, then you wished me harm. Obviously, I've gone through so much, a spiritual awakening, like an understanding of all of this, and now I don't see it that way. And it's so cool to sit back and watch all that. And I know you've been the same way, watching from where you were to where you grow. And I think it's just really neat to see the change too, of like the conversations and people willing to listen to opposing views. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because what I'm noticing is like, I truly believe when we say that we're on different timelines, we are, because in this specific, I kind of sat back and was like, it was uncomfortable to watch. It felt like I was watching a child get in trouble, and that was uncomfortable. However, so I'm like in the middle. I'm like, I completely fucking understand where Trump and JD Vance were coming from, in a sense of like, bro, you've gotten so much money. This has been dragged out. Like, people are dying. Like, I also understand the other side of like, was that the way to approach it? Do we need to be so rude and aggressive? And some people say, but you just watch the comments and they're polar opposite. People are seeing two different worlds and timelines. And I feel like there's some of us that are in the middle, and we're like, and it's like, is that how you're kind of feeling? But it's beautiful we can have those conversations. So cool that, and kudos to you guys for being able to like push past that and not just be like, oh, unfriend because you agreed or disagreed with Trump.
Yeah, I think like there's the art of disagreeing is lost, and I think the art of diplomacy was also lost in that exchange between Trump, Zelensky, and JD Vance, because there were moments there where, again, as someone who is like much like yourself, we have our opinions, but we're going down this path of emotional intelligence. And there were moments in that press conference where I thought, Zelensky could have said, you know what, I thank the vice president for their comments. We're going to take this offline. We will chat behind closed doors. I know there's a lunch happening. I know there's other things. We came a long way. I don't want to litigate this in front of everyone. And at the same time, similar to Trump, this is a moment where, there's something between the sword and the shield, right? Like the sword is where you need to go in and attack when you're facing an aggressor. in the shield where you can kind of back off and say, you know what, this can be covered through closed door meetings, and we don't have to litigate this in front of everyone. So,
No, the
uh,
ego is very, very firm there. It was like you guys
yeah,
like not that the points maybe on both sides were good. It was just how it was
yeah,
handled. And some people are saying that needed to happen so people see what happens behind closed doors and like
correct, yeah,
so it's like, is it a necessary evil? I don't know, but just like it made me cringe.
yeah,
I don't know if you
yeah.
follow this creator on YouTube. His name's Nuxnor.
Mm,
If you don't, I should send you. He's fucking
yeah,
hilarious, and he reports on everything in the States. He's actually Canadian, but he's a dual
yeah,
citizen.
nice.
And yeah, I watched all of the like things that happened through Trump through him, and I was just like, his commentary made it like livable because I was like, oh god, if I'm gonna listen to this, I have to have his comedy on it because like I can't. It's so uncomfortable.
Yeah,
But the comments, it's just again, it's more division. So what I would like to look to see from any leader is to really stop this divisiveness,
yeah,
particularly obviously in Canadian politics, which we'll get
yeah,
into, but American ones. Like I understand the frustration people must have and all this coming out at once of Doge and everything, whether you agree with Elon Musk or not. Like I like a transparency government. Are they being fully? I don't know, but at least it's a start. And
hmm,
so I understand people's frustrations and fears. And it
yeah,
just, it shows, like you said, we've done a lot of work to emotionally regulate online because we've been open and vocal about our opinions that are controversial.
hmm,
Not everyday people have been. And so it's like
right.
they're working through that right now. And it's just like,
Mhm.
I don't know.
It's very challenging. Yeah, it's very challenging. Yeah,
Like, okay, so I have to ask. So I'm
sure.
very proud of you for going on
Thank you.
TikTok live.
Yeah.
Because like I'm even afraid to post anything. I'm back in the season. I'll be posting obviously when this is out, but
Yeah,
it's one place that I'm just like there's different echo chambers there and
yeah.
they're deep echo chambers, and I feel like it's very divisive sometimes because you're like, oh, I find my community, but then you realize you fall into a deep echo chamber.
Mhm.
What are you finding? How did that start from the beginning? What were you like, I just want to like test my anxiety, I just want to test my like feelings, like what, how did this start?
Test my sanity, you know?
Yeah, like, do
Well,
I want to be suicidal? Like,
yeah. Right? So, the one thing that I found over and over as I was talking to more people was people were saying, "Oh, did you see that thing on TikTok? Did you see that thing on TikTok?" And
No, I'm a millennial. I seen it on Reels.
I see it on Reels, right? And it got me thinking, like, it reminded me so much of the early 2000s when people would send me YouTube videos, and we didn't have like cell phones and computers that could just whip open those links, and it was like lagging and all that. I'm like, I'm not gonna watch like a cat video or whatever, right?
Yeah,
So like I kind of dismissed that, and I regret it because I'm thinking, man, if I started YouTube earlier, like where could this have been, right? But
feel that.
you can't look back.
Nope.
I started thinking about that with TikTok, and I caught myself when people were saying, "Oh, did you see that TikTok?" And I would dismiss it as like, "Oh, that's probably like some TikTok dance or like, something like
Yeah,
stupid,
some
right?"
dumb trend. Yeah.
Exactly. So I clicked a couple links people were sending, and it was like the beauty of TikTok was that these were like 5-10 minute long, like deep discussions, and the way that they edited it was like really good and a good story. And I'm like, that's interesting. There's like real thought leaders
Mm-hmm.
on this platform that I was dismissing.
Okay.
And I started finding more and more really interesting people on TikTok. I'm like, oh, and they've got like just insane amount of followers because they do go into the deep dives. And I thought maybe this is a nice like pivot because at the time, just a few years ago here on Instagram, like there a lot of my stuff, I'm sure your stuff as well, has been censored. Like
Oh,
I've seen
still.
views go down dramatically, comments get blocked, my stuff get like I get restrictions. And then on TikTok, I'm noticing like these people are talking about things that are way more controversial than I've ever.
Thought
And they're
about.
yeah, and they're on it,
Yeah,
and
they're doing it. They're getting lots of views. What the fuck?
yeah, what the hell's going on? Like
Yeah.
there's an untapped market. But
Yep.
so on the positive, I was like, that's what drew me in. But the downside with TikTok is the level of regulation isn't nearly what it is on other platforms. So
True.
I've experienced and others have experienced just a litany of just racist, like I'm talking really racist comments, like I'm going to find out where you live, you stupid Indian, like all kinds of things you would never believe. And I'm like, yeah. And so I'm thinking in my head, like when those comments come in, I'm like thinking, ha ha ha, like the algorithm's going to figure you out and you're going to get banned. So see you later. The algorithm on TikTok doesn't operate that way.
Doubles down almost.
It almost doubles down, and I
Yeah.
think a lot of like trolls have figured out ways to create thousands of accounts. So
Yes.
even if you mark something as like racist, reported as offensive, like they've already created another account, and they'll be like, ha ha ha, this stupid Indian thinks he could block me. Well, guess what? I have 1,000 accounts. And like that's an everyday thing on TikTok. And
Do you think
so
they're real people, or do you think they're like bots, or do you think maybe a mix of both? Like, I'm not saying that
yeah,
racism isn't here. I'm not saying that.
yeah,
But like, I noticed that obviously traffic comes from rage and anger and rage baiting. Like, we
exactly.
know that. So like, is the algorithm putting that in there to get people to click on, you know what I mean? And start arguing and be like, fuck you,
Yeah.
don't. Cause like, obviously it's awful. So anything
Mhm.
that's deemed as like awful, I could see them having bot accounts encouraging that, pulling out the true races, and then
Yeah.
pulling the people against that, fighting it, because it's bringing you into the app. And I'm not saying it doesn't
Yeah.
happen, because there are fucking people like that for sure, but
Oh
like, I
my
wonder
gosh.
if
Yeah.
they do capitalize on that too. I'm
100%.
curious.
I think so. I think you're bang on, because it just kept happening every time I put something out. And
Mm.
what was really interesting is as I started doing more lives, I developed this community, and people would call out racists in the comments and be like,
Okay.
this guy, like, what are you doing? He's trying to like, talk about a topic, and all you're focused on is his skin color. Like, this messed up,
Yeah,
which is really cool. But I can't lie, like I am still human, so you
totally.
don't have a good feeling. So it was one of the things where I was like, man, do I want to do another live knowing that that's
Gonna
gonna
happen.
happen, right? And it happened enough times where I was like, I need to kind of pull back, because I've noticed that my energy
Change.
is shifting in a way that, like, I'm doing a nice live, I'm talking about whatever, and then
Mhm.
on my screen I'm seeing like, shut the f up, you Indian, like all these like super racist things. I'm like, that's pretty messed up. To one or two is fine, but the constant barragement of it, I think they call it dogpiling. I think that's the
Yeah.
part where I was like, okay, something's telling me this is not the best use of my time until this
Fair.
platform
Figures.
figures this out.
Yeah. Because, like, think about it, programming, right? Like, that's where
Yeah,
my brain goes. So it's like
yeah,
programming to both sides, programming
yeah,
you to make you think that in your head. And, like, you never thought
exactly.
about that until you've seen it.
Yeah,
Again, not disclaiming that there's not racism, but we've also talked that, like,
yeah,
there's an extreme where people are calling
yeah,
everything racism. And it's
yeah,
like, no, no, we can still question things. It
yeah.
doesn't, but like that is like, and the only reason why I say that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, most of
Mhm.
the time when I ask the question of people of color, like, do you see that in your regular life? Like Sunit said, yeah, when I was a kid, I'd seen that, but it's very rare now as an adult that I see that. Like, it maybe
Yeah.
has happened once or twice in my adult life. So that's why I wonder, like, are people just brazen because there's a fucking keyboard? Sure.
Mm.
But I also could see apps or marketing people, or like, I've learned so much about marketing and PR over the last 6 months, especially with this Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni situation.
Yeah,
Like that, I feel like there's a lot more out there that we don't even know about programming our brains. So I do
yeah,
wonder, and that's not just like racism. That could be people that are maybe overweight, or white people are saying, "Oh, you're a racist," with everything that you say every single time you question something. It's like, you're a
yeah,
racist, and you're like, well, fuck. Like, and I'm
yeah,
gonna start. We talked about this last time. I'm gonna start. I did start believing it, because my
yeah,
whole life it was like, you're white and you can't have an opinion. So I'm like, okay. And then it was just like, then all my friends of color like, say stuff. We like it when you talk. I'm like, okay,
yeah,
cool. Let's reprogram
exactly.
that. It's just nuts.
100%. Like,
And so I feel that though, because even though you don't know, even if it's not real, it's still going to affect you. You're
yeah,
like, I don't care how people are like, oh, be mentally tough. It's like, yeah,
yeah,
but like, we cannot be dickheads too. Just a thought.
yeah,
Like, fuck off with that.
definitely.
Has it gotten
100%.
better? Has it gotten better? Are you still doing it, or are you on a hiatus still?
A bit of a hiatus, but I will say,
Nice.
to your point, I think that it is not Canada at all. This is not, I've never experienced, I mean, sure, I've never experienced open racism in Canada. Like, people may have their opinions, whatever. I mean, everyone's got their opinions on all
Of
types of
course.
things, right?
Totally.
I've never experienced what I've seen on TikTok ever before in my life as a Canadian. And so I totally take your point. I don't think it's reflective of Canada. I don't think it's reflective at all of Canadians, or even Americans. I mean, I've gone to America many times and I've never experienced that either. So I do think there's a bot farm or some type of trolling thing
Yeah.
where that's happening, because it's no reflection of the broader society. And as you were speaking, it kind of sparked something in me. I'm like, yeah, that isn't a reflection. So like, I shouldn't let that affect me. You know what I mean? So
Not saying that you should, but just like I do wonder because, like, think about
Yeah,
AI. Is it following an algorithm and it's got these accounts, and these
yeah,
accounts have
good point.
followers based on rage bait? They
Yeah,
pick up words that it's something that someone's on a live, and you say something or it catches that you're a different color. Is it then
yeah,
generated to now comment and talk to these people and just bring people to the accounts? Who the fuck is this person saying
so
this?
true.
They get more views. They're watching videos that they've content farmed, right? Like
Yeah.
I think that's where people we've like I seen something the other day that actually made me really sad and said like it's so funny you said like I'm not gonna
Yeah.
watch the cat video, but like our cat video is now over because how do you know eventually you're not gonna know if it's a real cat video or an
Yeah.
AI generated video. And I
Yeah.
think that there's so much advancement that we have no idea
Yeah.
is even happening. And so I wonder, yeah, like is there content farming rage baiting to then bring people to that TikTok account because they get lots of views and they're not in
Mhm.
Canada. Canada, we don't make views
Yep.
or money off TikTok, I believe.
Yeah, you're right.
And so it's like, is that generating money and income? Kind of like a scammer. That's kind of how I look at it.
Yep. No, you're
Shit.
bang on.
We gotta look into this more.
I think you're bang on. I think that's exactly it because again, it's not reflective at all about Canada and Canadians and our values. In fact,
And Americans too.
yeah,
Like so many people say Americans are racist, and there are, but there's
yeah,
lots that aren't.
exactly. And I think it's so wild, that aside, the conversations that I've had with people, like when I have, and I know we'll talk about this, but when I did that deep dive on medical assistance in dying,
Yeah. Dude,
like
yes.
the amount of people who were like, I had no effing idea that this is happening and the rate at which it's happening. And I'm like, this is the power of this podcast. It's like similar to yourself, like we bring up these topics and people can dismiss them, sure, but there are people who are like, oh my goodness, like Brandy did her research, Christopher did his research, they linked it in the description, so they're not making this stuff up because it's very easy for either of us to do that.
Totally.
And they're citing government sources, they're putting graphs that are widely publicly available. People just don't have the time to do this, right?
No, too busy.
They're too busy,
They
so
gotta pay for food.
they got they got $8 for eggs,
They pay $8 eggs, man. Like fuck.
Yeah. So they don't have the time, and they've got kids, they've got elder care, and so suddenly they're like, wait, what? Like medical assistance and what? Like Botox? Like what's happening here? Like IVF. I saw a really interesting reel about someone who's now an adult who was born through IVF, and they've talked about their experiences, which is really interesting. And I'm like,
Very interesting.
this is where I think our value add is, and that's what I need to focus on more in TikTok, less on that crazy
Fair.
AI nonsense and more
Yes.
on the genuine connections and conversations that I've been having.
Yeah, like I like to think about being a thought gardener. So
Yeah.
it's like I'm planting seeds and I might not be right. I'm just finding this stuff and just relaying what I, from my knowledge of the people that I've talked to, been like, hey, look into this if this matters to you. I could be
Yeah.
wrong. I could, right? And I just want people to have informed consent and not to
Yeah.
feel trapped in their mind, trapped in their situation, or put themselves at risk. And that's always what I've been about. And
Yeah.
like, but at the same time, it's not always hit. So I've always been like, how, and every season I try to reevaluate, how can I get what I'm trying to say received in the right way? Am I doing it with compassion? Am I doing it with understanding? Am I
Yeah.
doing it with less ego? Am I doing it with grace and understanding? Right? Like, and I've changed and I've evolved through being open and being honest. Right. And I think that's why that's, we get caught up. I got caught up and I love talking about politics, but I'm like, okay, I've talked about politics for 4 years. I don't want to, it's not that I don't want to talk about it anymore, but like, I can say that and someone's going to go to my page and go, well, you're a right-wing, extreme, racist, transphobic because you talked about children at drag one time 4 seasons ago, and it's like, sure. And I don't really care about that anymore, but I'm like, my point isn't going to stick to this person.
Yeah.
So how do I convey that message so it's going to stick to them so that at least they will take the seed. They might not plant it. They might just hold it in a jar and it might die. But maybe someone else comes in their life that they respect and they say, hey, you know what? The weather's fucking weird. And, I looked into this and I found a TikTok, and I will say, Grant believes more of the things that I say now because of fucking TikTok. So I like it is, if anybody's dismissing it, like I agree. I was behind on it and I regret it. And I wish I would have not been so conspiratorial a couple years ago and been like, China's looking at my data.
Yeah.
Like not that I don't care, but really Canada is fucking doing it anyway. So like really we have more things to worry about. But it is that someone on TikTok, I seen this on TikTok. I seen a guy talk about how in World War whatever, they had weather modifications. And then I found out that they have a treaty. If they have a treaty between different countries to not use weather modifications in war, how are we denying that it's in existence? Okay, so now this crazy bitch that I hear talking about this, she's crazy, but hold on, this person that I respect now found something.
Yeah.
And it's actually government. Oh my God, okay, maybe this is real. And then all of a sudden it's, hey B, I seen some weird patterns in the sky the other day. They didn't look like clouds. I'm like, oh. Yep. I'm so, I shared that the other day. It's like Mr. Rogers or whatever. Like, I'm so proud of you. And I'm not saying I'm right and I know anything, and I will always say I know shit about fuck.
Yeah.
I just find this stuff interesting and I don't trust the government. So, and why does that matter? Well, where are we today? Everything that I've been squawking about for the last 4 years is now, look at where we are. Canada is not in a good position. I'm not trying to fearmonger people, but we're not in a good spot.
Yeah.
And it's only going to get worse. What is the fuck is going on with our government? And why are we been no government for a couple months? And why is no one upset about this? What are you feeling about that? What's going on in your world with that?
It's you hit the nail on the head with we're not the greatest spot, and I think a lot of things, but ultimately it comes down to us as Canadians undoing, and I wrote this in my last blog, we don't know who we are as Canadians. We have an identity crisis, and I say that because in my conversations, and I'm sure in your conversations, we're finding out more and more about what Canadians actually think on things. The Freedom Convoy, when that happened in 2022, a lot of people said, oh, that was against the vaccine mandates and regular lockdowns, et cetera, and these were unvaxxed people and the anti-vaxxers. And the Rouleau Commission that was done by the federal judge, Justice Rouleau, he in the first volume, he said the Freedom Convoy it's hard to even describe it, but it was pent up frustration with government as a whole. It wasn't just about vaccine mandates, because to be honest, the truckers, it was really upsetting that the U.S. government put in vaccine mandates for truckers to go back and forth to Canada and the United States. But it wasn't like that. It was routine regional lockdowns, rolling lockdowns, vaccine pushes by the government, medical autonomy. What about our individual rights and freedoms, like
vax passes to go to the fucking restaurant,
vaccine passports. Yeah, it was pretty wild. And so the Rouleau Commission, I think, made an interesting finding, which was, they didn't openly say this, but Canadians, we really don't know what we stand for. I don't think Canadians truly understand that. And that includes myself. Like, I don't think that when Trudeau put in place the Emergencies Act, I don't know if enough Canadians knew what that really meant.
Nope, they didn't. I did. Not to be that way, but I remember sitting at work and I had watched it because I was following Kristen Nagel from the beginning, and she was on the front lines the whole time. Right. Like, and Sarah Sejunian, I've had on the show, right? Like those women I watched those booths, and I watched people got trampled in live time, and I couldn't breathe, where some people were like, oh, it doesn't matter. And I was like, I literally felt like the world was ending, like we were about to go into war. That's how scary it was if you were watching from the front lines. I couldn't imagine if you were there. And so like that just blew my world right up. And I was like, why are more people not upset about this? It got deemed illegal and people are still not mad about it. But to your point, this is, and I want to talk about this too, the fake patriotism right now. Yeah. I'm really struggling with it, dude. Cause so you're to your point that when this happened, when people's bank accounts got frozen, when Pat King got thrown into jail, because the mainstream narrative was, he's a conspiracy theorist, he's a Nazi, he's a whatever, all the fancy words. Everyone discredited the injustice that they served, Tamara Lynch, all of those people. And people dehumanized them, which we were used to because we just dehumanized unvaccinated people. When you don't stand for anything, I love that saying, you don't stand for anything, you fall for when you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And
Great.
that was very true over that time. So the patriotism I'm seeing right now is like, where were you when your fellow Canadians couldn't go to funerals, weddings, they couldn't witness the birth of their children, their kids have development. Oh, I've clearly got them. Mental issues. Change the word. Fuck. Honestly, being French immersion child really fucked me up. English really fucks me up sometimes. But there's issues that are had, like all the things, like the economy, all of that, right? So it's like the patriotism now, you're doing it because the government's telling you to do it. So what do you stand for? And anybody that stood up during the pandemic, whether they agreed or not, they're vaccinated or not, to your point, it wasn't about that. It was about where's Canada going, and this is a slippery slope, and it just is.
Yeah, I think you're bang on. I think for most Canadians, when I ask them, like, what is our national identity, we have, unlike many countries in the world, we actually do have a really high level of trust in government, which is very interesting.
Scary.
But also, we attach our national identity to things like public health care. Which is also really interesting, right? Because when we
engage... That's our identifier nationally. Like, Americans like, oh, Canadian healthcare. I'm like, oh.
Yeah. And it's like one of the things, and again, we can go down the path of discussing the merits, but it's very odd that a country has a national identity associated with a public program, government program. Like, here's the reality that I see, and we've been in relationships, we've been friendships, partners, etc. I think that a strong relationship needs to have tough conversations, and we in Canada, we haven't had tough conversations. I don't know if all Canadians would agree on our stance on capital punishment, on abortion, on medical assistance in dying. These are heavy topics, and I give the United States, with all its flaws, a lot of credit
100%.
For some of its leaders for saying, you know what, like, I'm a Christian and I don't believe in abortion. I you can agree or disagree, but I give that person credit for being like, this is not something that I can, go to bed. And that's one of the things here in Canada. We just say, okay, I like, the nice guy always finishes last. Everybody knows that.
He does.
We need to be a bit of an asshole. And not in the, I'm going to be an asshole for no reason.
Not in an egotistical way.
Right. But we need to be able to elect leaders. It's so fascinating to me how when the Conservatives elect a leader, they're already saying, oh, abortion's not on the table. It's not up for discussion. It's the first thing that they say. We're not opening that. Why not? Like, why don't you open that? And they know that they're trying to get reelected, and this is not an electable policy.
Conversation, yes.
You compound that year over year, decade over decade, and this is the state we're in as a country. No leader on either side has been able to just say, this is what I think. This is what I think our country should be. These are the values that I uphold. And, I'm going to go in this path. And I think even Trudeau, there's a book recently written about him, and it talks about, like, he even knows that it's an act because he's trained as an actor, right? Like, he's professionally trained as an actor.
And a family politician.
And
this is a family business from day one. You're like, and that's why so many people, and I'm not going to lie, I'd be kind of interested to see what Barron Trump turns into, because I think, like, he's super smart, right? And he's just so well poised, but he has been in that realm forever. So like, I think you're grown into that on top of Trudeau having actual training on being an actor. Like, people joke about it. It's like, no, seriously, and if you have the quote unquote look, like, how many people outside of our country, I think he's disgusting, but I understand. And that's just because of what he's done. Like, I understand where people are like, oh, he's better looking than maybe like Trump. Sure. But like, he is destroying the country. So I don't really care. I'd rather have the Cheeto being a little bit abrasive and being, a little bit, not as polished, because maybe he didn't grow up in as a politician, right? But I do think he has a lot to work off. I'm not saying that is one big thing, but at the same time, at least we know what the fuck he stands for. And I think that's one thing that I do appreciate about Pierre, that he does, in some senses, in some things, he's very strong on, like, criminals and like fentanyl and drug crisis. Like, he does hit some of the ones that are important, but he is placating on some of those very difficult topics. And I don't know if that's by design or just like, I thought about this the other day with all the things that Trump's are doing. I bet you that
Mm-hmm.
there's some things that he would have wanted to do had he been elected in 2020. But I think
Mm-hmm.
the world maybe wouldn't have been ready for all the things that he's unleashing and uncovering now than they were in 2024. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
is it being strategic in, I look at it like cannabis. Okay, this is just like, I'm going to just stick with me here.
Mm-hmm.
When cannabis first came out, like the devil's lettuce, Canadians are so against it. We shouldn't talk about it. It's awful. Da da da. I've been in industry day one. Day
Yeah.
one, I've been selling weed since it's became legal in Canada,
Yeah.
and now I move millions of dollars of weed across the country. Your dreams come true, kids. You can be a legal drug dealer one day.
Yeah.
But when it first came out, everyone was so upset about the regulation, about how we couldn't promote it and advertise, and we had to keep everything. It looked like a clinic. It was very like da 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 da. And my argument back was like, I understand that, but you got to understand that there's both sides of the spectrum here and there's extremes. And for us to meet in the middle, we need to start slow and start, working together to collaborate so that everyone's comfortable. So now that cannabis has been out there in the legal market for 6+ years, there is advertisements. The windows can be exposed now. We have come further because people are realizing, oh my God, it's not fentanyl. Like, okay, you guys all fucking kiki it up for like, oh, they're stopping the drug crisis in safe supply, which is just being sold on the streets. But then you're like, cannabis, like whatever.
Yeah.
Anyways, but understanding that there's extremes, so we have to come to the middle. So I wonder if that is, and my hope is that's what the conservatives are looking at, of being like, hey, we're being viewed as extreme right wingers. There is extreme left wingers. How do we relate to them? How can we start to work together with them? And are they maybe trying to not stir the pot on those big ones, but start with the little ones? And as things progress, things are going to get more politically aligned when it comes to campaigning this year or whenever the fuck. Anyway, like, I just wonder if that's like a tactic, because I kind of could understand that. But also at the same time, to your point, I want to know what you stand for, so there's no fucking surprise when I elect you.
You're right. And it's something that researchers call permanent campaign mode. I'm not sure if you've heard that before, but
I feel like that's what we are in.
Yeah, it's just like, it's whatever the kind of flavor of the day is. And to your point, it's like, I would be really interested, and I think we said this on the last podcast, to have seen Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump in a debate.
Yeah,
because,
he got so upset at RFK. Holy shit!
Oh my goodness! And it's so interesting when RFK was like, "But Bernie, you got 1.5 million from Big Pharma," and he's like, "No, I didn't." No. It's so interesting.
Like, all the flushness in your face just said that you sir are lying. I think Bernie is getting exposed for not being the little guy as much. It's like, this is the thing I think that's happening this year, is that everyone's really starting to see the truth. Like, when I got like a spiritual awakening a couple years ago, they said veils would keep lifting.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I've ever heard anything so fucking accurate in my life. Like, it is so true. It's like, this is just coming through in layers. Like, we'll never get through the Epstein layer. Okay. Let's just be honest with that one.
My goodness.
But like, if I think about like, and I don't know how long you've been talking about politics and like maybe the corruption, but like, I've been talking about it for at least, at least 2 years. I'd say the first 2 years I was podcasting, it was like, experience is like all amazing. Love. But then just as the Freedom Convoy hit, I was like, I'm done. I need to be completely honest here. I am unvaccinated. I feel trapped. I feel depressed. All those things. And that felt really good. Shit, where was I going with this? I was just thinking about how tough it was back then and how scary it was to hit send on some of the vaccine conversations. But I feel, no, I don't know. Where was I going? Christopher, where was I going?
It's all good.
Sell drugs, but don't do them.
Yeah.
Kids.
No, definitely. I think that you're right, that it was so interesting to see that Bernie was getting exposed for that.
That's
but I feel like
the veils.
The veils were lifting.
It's happening.
And
Bernie's veils up. You naked now, Bernie?
And I feel like that it's sad, but the system is put up, is established in a way where certain conversations, they can't happen. And I'm trying to like navigate that myself. And so I don't know how, I mean, a lot of people have told me not to say anything, but circle of confidence. But there are like pretty prominent conservatives that have reached out and want to do like collabs, and they've narrowed the scope of what's in and what's out. And what's interesting is when I talk to others in that space, I'm like, this person wants to narrow the scope. Others are like, don't do that, because you're kind of turning your back on open minds. And I'm like, exactly. That's the value add. And so I'm sure you are at a crossroads. Sometimes I'm at a crossroads too, because both of us could really pitch something very different. If I were the DEI guy who was like
We know you are.
BLM, I
Just
would be
kidding.
a millionaire. I'd be in France. I'd
100%.
have a yacht.
100%.
I'd have a
It's
yacht,
so hard to not
right?
sell your soul.
Yeah, like I'd have sponsors. I'd be like, I don't even know where the money's coming in. I have piles of money behind me.
On every podcast out there.
Every podcast.
Yeah, totally. But it's, and to your point, like, there's got to be some check and balances. And I think that's my biggest struggle with our Canadian government. I think that's the biggest problem as Canadians is we just thought that they were doing the right thing always.
Yeah.
Not realizing, I actually wrote this down because just before we got on, I just randomly found a Joe Rogan clip with, Mel Gibson. And I know both of them obviously have their own controversial things. I love how they just speak. Like, I love people that just speak it, whether I agree with them or not. I just like it. And if they could be the extreme left, I'm fine. Say it. Let me know who you fucking are.
Yeah.
What is in your medicine cabinet is like, that's what I want to know. What is saved in your screenshots? Tell me.
Yeah.
But he's basically alluding, saying like, once a narrative gets established and there's a profit attached to that solution, that narrative gets a hold to everything. So businesses, bills, ideologies get built around this. Like echo chambers get built, and that's how it is. And it was specifically speaking about climate change in that conversation. Obviously they were talking about the fires down in California. It must have been clipped from, but I just thought that that's so interesting because I feel like that is the same thing that's happened in Canada. It's like they get this idea, and let's just say it's something good and it's funded, it's supposed to be really good, and then we find out like 5-6 years later that there was corruption in it. There's so many money wasn't, like, I just watched one and I know, fuck, this is gonna be controversial too, but I read that after 3 years they haven't found any bodies in the graves, the unmarked graves. Now again, I'm not saying that things didn't happen, and I'm not, but again, this is millions. I think someone said $1.6 million funded, and they haven't come up with anything. At what point do we stop and check and balance? Okay. We Charity, SNC Lavalin, they're getting fucking, what, are they not getting sued now from someone for the SNC Lavalin stuff because the RCMP is not moving? Like, because we haven't been involved, because we've just trusted these people blindly, because there's just narratives that people aren't reading in and they're just like, yeah, climate change, yeah, this, yeah, fucking whatever. They don't realize in the background that policies are being shit, red tape's being added, people are getting suffocated, but the elite that we all claim to hate, their pockets are being filled. Those veils are lifting in Canada right now. Like, and I've been talking about this forever, you guys. Like, you could go back. Like, I started keeping up with Canada like 2 fucking seasons ago. I have been trying so hard to just, like, to our point, plant seeds. But, like, it's getting bad. Like,
it is.
As I'm watching, it's just like all of these narratives, these headlines, they're getting solidified by groupthink. Everything that we've just talked about kind of comes into where we're at in Canada right now. Groupthink. Canadians are too busy and are scared. They're scared of being able to pay their bills. They're scared of, like, I feel like I'm never going to own a home. I understand I live in Kelowna, BC. All right. I know that. But, like, it feels like it's never going to happen. Like, people don't want to have kids because they're scared of everything. Like, it's just, and I'm not sure what we need to do, but I think not having the hard conversations, again, wrapping everything we just said back into where we are now is where we are. So again, thank you for, and I agree with you. I always feel guilty too. I don't go on lives. I don't do those things. I don't have to have my journalism or my reporting that way. Yeah, I can do it however I want to do it. Yeah. And I feel like it's easy to get caught up in how you should be doing it because other creators that are very big are doing that. But I think, like, these are the ways that we have to do it, where it's like, I'm not going to sit there and argue a fucking bot, or no offense, an American that doesn't understand what's going on in Canada or whatever, you know what I mean? So I think we just got to keep doing this. And I think if Canadians are scared, they just need to get educated in what's going on.
And I think that's our value add right there, because we are that ability, we are that vehicle to kind of demystify those massive government reports into, like, hey, by the way, they kind of sneak this into the bill. One thing that
many sneaky things in bills that have nothing to do with anything. There's the budget bill, and then they squashed fucking natural health products in there.
That's right. That's right.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, even the climate action thing that the government did, they put in these ridiculously high emissions targets for the agriculture sector. Well, guess what? They didn't even consult with the agriculture. They didn't talk to farmers. So I had farmers on, I had Fertilizer Canada on being like, hey, what the heck? Like, we're all for climate change. We're actually making major strides in reducing our greenhouse gases, but we can't hit these insane targets. That would kill our industry. And so the government had to backtrack. And so it's things like that that really percolate my ear, because I'm thinking this is my kind of prognosis. I think Canada is too rich and we have a low population, and that allows government to do this kind of stuff. Because when we're too rich of a nation, governments can fund pet projects that can fly under the radar. And when you have a media that kind of sings to the tune, and I'm not saying they're liberal all the time, because
I
I've
am.
seen them
Just kidding.
also.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah, like I've
They
also
have been
seen them.
based. I've seen some really like, oh, I didn't expect this to come out of mainstream media. Holy shit.
Right, because sometimes they do actually a really good job of
Yeah.
criticizing Trudeau or a liberal
Anyone.
provincial government, which I think is great. But I
Mhm.
think that when government and media are kind of somehow connected, because when government does something, it's like what happened last night at the Oval Office when Trump
Mhm.
said this is going to make for great TV. Like, I think people should read in between the lines there. I think media and Trump do have a vested interest in keeping this gong show going, because it's ratings for them and it's more publicity for Trump. Like,
Keep
if
them
I'm the
distracted
CEO,
too.
yeah, exactly. If I'm the CEO of Time Warner, why wouldn't I
Jump on
absolutely
that.
love this? What's going on?
Capitalize on it. 100%.
My YouTube channel is going to go crazy. All my networks are going to go crazy. Like, money, money, money. So
Mhm.
I think people should recognize there are linkages between government and media, and that is
100%.
something that we in Canada should be very concerned about. Again, low population, very wealthy nation, meaning we're taxed very high, and that gives government the ability to engage
Mismanage
in
our
these pet
money.
projects. Yeah, for sure.
And that's why I said the other day, like so many people, one thing that frustrates me that I get told is like, well, I don't want to be involved in politics. Bitch, you pay taxes.
Yes.
You are political. I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Yes.
You pay taxes every
Yeah.
fucking which way, whether you like it or not. Maybe you didn't
Yeah.
pay your taxes for 5 years, whatever. Don't go past 5 years, guys. I did it once. Don't do it. After 5, and I like minute, like I got it in. I'm getting my refund. Give me my money back, bitch. But I kind of explain it. This is how I look at it. Is like, okay, the government is like an accountant, or like our sorry, no accountant, like our financial work. We give them all the money, and they're supposed to disperse that in the way that benefits Canadians.
Yeah.
Again, there's no check and balances because the motherfuckers that are doing that are getting their pockets lined through these core companies. Through again, guys, go back to Keeping Up in Canada's. Me and Haley went through a whole fucking hour and a half just off of Google Wiki government corruption. They literally have a table, you guys. There's a fucking table. It's in there, and it was everything before 2020. So what's going to come out in the next couple of years? Again, like we said, We Charity, Trudeau's family fucking completely benefited from that. Talk about SNC Lavalin and all the fucking money. All the unethical things that Trudeau has done, like taking trips from Aga Khan, like has done so many disrespectful things on, like it's absolutely insane. And what freaks me out is that, like you said, the media paints him in a different light. It's like, oh, he went and visited Aga Khan. It's like, no, he would, like, and just the way they spin it. And if you're someone that goes outside of your algorithm and your bubble and you talk to like Americans, or you're on TikTok, you see a completely different world.
Yeah.
But if you are so busy, most Canadians are, they have their parents, they have jobs, they're trying to keep up with the Joneses, they're trying to, do all these things. They're seeing headlines. That headline then turns into in your subconscious. Your subconscious runs yourself, right? So if you're not a free thinker and you're just like an NPC going through life, you're going to repeat the things and the propaganda and the repetition. And I seen that the most in the pandemic, but it was the most during the American election that I noticed it with the news down in the States. And it would be like, this is a threat to our democracy. This is a threat to our, it was like repetitive, these phrases. And it's like, Canadians, how can you not see that you're being fed the same thing? And then this made me think even more. Think about back when we didn't even have TV or news and it was just the radio. How controlled where they were getting their information from was even more controlled. And I think that's why everything feels like it's out of control right now, is because there's so much information at our fingertips. It's like, what is real and what is not? But the government not being great is very real, Canada. Okay? We live in a beautiful place. We can fix this. We got to talk about it, though. I don't know the solutions, but talking about it is step one.
talking about it is definitely step one. And I think the reality is that not talking about it has led us down a path where, we trust, like, again, trust in government is very high in Canada, which is unlike many places around the world. And I think that's something we as a country should talk about, because anytime you trust an institution, they're run by human beings that are flawed and biased, etc. I think
Totally.
the other challenge is we have to, because we're such a wealthy nation, the pet projects become larger and larger. So, medical assistance in dying, people don't understand. We have two tracks in Canada, one where there's a terminal illness, and then another where, and death is foreseeable. And we have another track where death is not foreseeable.
That's the
And
track I have a problem with.
and I think we're the only jurisdiction with a two-track system. Our numbers are crazy compared to the rest of the world. On average, we introduced it in 2017. It's increasing by 16% year over year. This year, as of 2023, there's 68,000 people who've opted for MAiD. There's about 20,000 people who opt for it every year. So we can only imagine by now we're probably around 80,000, 90,000. And the amount, and when I went through the MAiD Death Review Committee here in Ontario, the chief coroner, who, interestingly enough, him and I are trying to figure out a podcast together.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
There was the MAiD Death Review Committee, and they went through 6 case studies where people were, we mentioned earlier how cost of living is crazy. Well, this person struggling with depression, struggling with housing here in Toronto, it's insane. And they were offered MAiD and they opted for it. And, or other things where someone was homeless or something, or they were poor and they had like irritable bowel syndrome, like things, and it was all like psychological. Yep. And they weren't getting better, and they were offered MAiD. And also the medical practitioners did not consult their families. And so it's just like these things where, this is the type of policy, and I know people think it's extreme, but I just want to put this out there to all the listeners. You want to hear something extreme? Like the Quebec College of Physicians, one of the doctors on the Quebec College of Physicians said that if you have a child and that child is born with a deformity, you should have the right to end that child's life. Now, that is I understand what infanticide is, and people get charged for that. It's a criminal charge. So why put that forward in your role as a Quebec College of Physicians physician when you have this heightened, say with government, and your voice actually matters a lot? Why would you put that forward in that way instead of saying, this is an interesting discussion Canadians should be having, instead of putting forward that as an idea, policy? Yeah. That to me is where our country, we allow a lot of these extreme policies into our ether. And because Canadians aren't getting that deep dive, a lot of politicians are like, well, no one's saying anything about it. Let's just do it.
And you won't say anything about it unless it affects you.
Correct.
And that's what I feel like a lot of Canadians think, oh, well, the healthcare system's good. It's good enough for me, but not realizing that it's not for a lot of people. And it's just like, hey, just because that's not your experience doesn't mean it's not happening. And that one bigger problem is if someone has a positive experience within those policies, and then it's like, how dare you, this saved my life. And it's just like, you try to talk to anybody about safe supply or harm reduction in BC. And if that has saved as in like kept them in an active addiction, I struggle with that. I don't find that that's helping, right? But then you get that, and then it's like no one can have dissenting arguments. And I guess back to your point of what do you stand for as Canadians? What's your morals? And to get to that point where he is it with Quebec, that means that individual has dehumanized children, humans. This is where I struggle with the abortion talk. What's the line? Again, I understand there's circumstances, and in Canada, we're all fine. And again, to your point, Conservatives have said we're not touching the abortion rules, which I feel like they're all right. Like they're, it's whatever. I wouldn't say it shouldn't exist ever, but someone that has had many miscarriages and does struggle with fertility, I have a different lens where I can also understand people that need them. But my point is the extremisms of each need to be called out, because if they don't, they breed ideas like this and people that get to those positions. Everyone's so busy just trying to work and have their lives and keep up with the Joneses, and they're distracted by so many things to be afraid of. Like, I'm just exhausted by the end of the day that they're not actually fucking looking into things that actually affect them. Yeah. This is where I feel like, again, y'all are bitching about Trump's tariffs, and that really, really sucks. I really, really hate it. Yeah. Where did it stem from? We've known about this since November. Canadian government has had since November to do something about this, and instead they fucking pro-raw government, and so Jagmeet Singh can get his fucking pension. Good job, buddy. I called it out at the end of the season. Last season, I said Justin Trudeau allegedly stepped down. I called it out. I said, this is bullshit. This is just a fucking drama show. This is just a TikTok trend. He's not actually doing anything. He's going to shut everything down to make it the absolute biggest problem to go over to Pierre Poilievre or whatever liberal is going to take over for him, and kind of like one of a fuck you out the door. That's what I feel like he did. And I'm sorry, Canadians, if you're voting liberal, you really, really, really need to be looking into your party and what they are doing, because I'll be fucked if I would have said 2 years ago, I hope Chrystia Freeland wins, because that's where I'm at right now. That's where I'm at, because Mark Carney is not what we fucking want. That is Trudeau times 10. But again, Canadians aren't going to look at it. They're just going to look at, which I find ironic for liberals. This is a white man. I thought y'all hate whited men at the top. I thought that's what you're against, but you voted to but then you kicked out a woman of color. Whoa, liberals, what is going on?
And you see that? It's so interesting you say that, because this is exactly another crossroads. On TikTok. Right? We should do one together.
No, you dare fucking clip this from your TikTok, you asshole.
No clips. Oh my God, that's so funny. But it's so interesting you say that, because that's another crossroads I think Canadians are at, because it's amazing. If I were to tell you a politician, I'm not going to say what stripe, but this person will say that they don't know how many times they did blackface, that they're going to kick out the first Indigenous justice minister ever, that they're going to, if I were to tell you that and not tell you what party that is, I bet you most Canadians would be like, that's an alt-right conservative.
Yes.
But the reality is it's a liberal. And I think that this is where I think Canadians really are confused when it comes to DEI and anti-racism. I posted this thing on Instagram the other day. I'd love to know your opinion, but like, when it comes to DEI, most are like, okay, I get that, like, women, people of color, Indigenous, Black, people with disabilities, people with, neurodivergence, like, yes, there has not been representation, even though I see them in my communities, I see them in day-to-day life. I haven't seen them in the upper echelons of politics, government, media, corporations. I get that. And I think people say, like, yeah, that is kind of weird. I think where DEI proponents go off the deep end is they say, well, we're only hiring Brandy because she's a woman. We're only talking to Christopher because he's brown. Wait a minute. Is that what Brandy thinks? Is that what Christopher thinks? We've got to get rid of them, because that's the nut that I think DEI proponents haven't cracked. It's the meritocracy.
Yes.
And I think a lot of moderates are like, they get the underrepresentation, but they need that to be marred with meritocracy. They don't want Brandy or Christopher into these executive roles. They've never once worked in that industry a day in their lives. So that's something I wish more DEI proponents would come out and say, yes, we understand the underrepresentation, but we know there are people from underrepresented groups in industry that are not getting those positions. And that's what
and that's such a good point, because it's like, I always question this, because like, and again, white girl talking here, so sue me, but like, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but we did have a Black president. We have had people in politicians. There's lots of gay people in the American cabinet. There's a lot of that. There is a lot of that now. So my question is, are we making changes and waves in that, and people just aren't patient enough to see it come to true fruition? Instead, they want a participation trophy. I don't give a shit what you do at home on your private time, unless it's hurting children. Okay, that's my line, right? We've got to have some morals. We've got to have some shame. But
that's a pretty low line when you think about it, right?
I think so, right? Like, I think that's fair. I think we can all say, keep kids out of your fucking whatever in your life, unless you're doing something positive. That's it. I don't care but I care about your merit. Now, I can see the argument that people in minorities haven't been given that their whole entire lives. If we dial back 20, 30 years, they were not given as many opportunities. I completely understand
Yeah.
that. So, to me, the focus should be then, and this is where I don't think it should be like, this certain amount of people should be. It should be people that are interested in those fields, should be given those opportunities, and it should not matter of their color, who they are, their gender, whatever. They should be able to have those opportunities, but they still need to do the work to get there. Right. And I come from the cannabis. I see people from all different countries come work with us. We have people from all over the world. I would say majority of people in cannabis aren't actually like Canadians. Most of them are foreigners that have moved in, and, you know, there's a new industry. So it's really, not to say that, but it's easier to get in because it's all new. So your stuff from other worlds bringing into this new space is very, very beneficial, because we're figuring out, how did you do supply chains? Like my VP's from South Africa, and I get to talk to him about how he ran supply chains down there. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Or we have someone from the States where it's like things are very different. So it's very cool. It all comes together, and we grow and learn together. And it has nothing to do about those titles. But when you do nothing but hire for those titles, and the people, to your point, don't have the merit, don't have the experience, you're doing a disservice not only to them, the people around them, and everybody else. So while I understand, yes, please, like, make sure that you're having lots of different people come to the table. I'm in a male dominant space. I was in the oil field too. And I've never, there has been men that have treated me less, probably because I'm a woman. I would say 85% don't. And I'm not trying to be that, but I'm passionate and I love my job and I'm a hard worker. So that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that I'm a woman. I'm a hard worker and I do the things and I ask the questions and I move the needle forward, and I am a add to, I'm not a hindrance. And I think that that's what we should be looking at, is like, who is adding to your company? Doesn't maybe always matter the merits. I'm not formally educated, but I am an intersite planner for one of Canada's biggest cannabis companies in there. I move millions of dollars worth of weed across the country and store it. And I work with all these different things. Like, I didn't go to school for that. I worked my ass off in the office. I started as a fucking receptionist and I worked my way up to a manager. And then I went from an oil field manager to a bud tender. Let me tell you the fucking wage difference that had. That was like a fucking 60 grand drop for sure.
Wow.
But I wanted to do something I was passionate about, and I seen an opportunity and I fucking took it. And now look where I am. And I got there because I worked 6 fucking years to get up here. I didn't get there because I was a woman. And so when I look back, I don't feel insecure. I don't feel worried about, of course, I'm in corporate. I could lose my job tomorrow. Okay.
Sure.
But it's not going to be from who I am as a person, my hard work, because I'm a woman. None of that. It's because that's the way the business is. But people don't know how to emotionally regulate, and they take everything personally. And this is why I love corporate, because it's taught me to separate home and state. And so I would be pissed if I got these opportunities because I was just a woman. But I know it's not. I know it's because of how hard I've worked. So as a woman, I don't want given a job just to fill a quota. I want to feel good about the work that I'm doing. And I know that because I've earned it. And I can sit in a room with all these men and they're asking me what I think. My boss is always like, he fucking holds me up here. I have 2 male bosses. They hold me up here. I've never been treated like that in my life. They respect me up here. And is it because I'm passionate, hard worker, and all that? Yes. So to your point, meritocracy, but we need to focus then on DEI, on the opportunities given and the education and the training, and make sure you're doing what you want to do to set you up successfully. So when you come up to all the roadblocks that we all come up to in the world, you can fight them and feel good knowing that you're getting there because of your hard work, your experience, and what you've gained.
Mic drop. That's awesome, man. That is so awesome.
I'm such a fucking dry mouth. I should stop smoking weed before exposure. But
no,
that's
I love
just my
that.
thoughts. Like, fair as a woman. I can't speak of color because I'm see-through, but I am one of the demographics.
I love it. I love that, you know, and on the flip side, I love when people ask me about like, oh, how has your experience been being a brown man? I love that because I'm like, guys, you hear my voice, I'm Canadian. Like, you should ask me about being Canadian, because Canadian is a very different experience, as we're finding out around the world. But totally. I will say that, like, you know, you can't teach attitude. Attitude is something that you can't run. I absolutely don't like the t-shirt that Nike has where it's like lazy but talented. I hate that slogan. And the reason I hate that slogan is because I don't consider myself talented. I consider myself hardworking, similar to yourself. And like, that's just what drives me. And I think that I always tell people hard work is a blessing, because hard work is your opportunity to turn every small task you're given into, I'm going to friggin' swing for the fences on this one. If I strike out, I strike out. I hold my head up. I walk to the dugout. If I miss, I didn't listen to the coach. I tell the coach, all right, man, I know what you said. I take full responsibility.
My
I'll be
bad.
better next time. And you just keep building from that. And you'll find that it's ingrained in you, and you can't teach that. I try to teach young people where I work. I'm like, you know, don't ever say you're too busy.
Oh my God, no.
That's like the death knell, right? Like, figure out a way
That's
where
a
you can.
mindset.
It's a mindset. You can prioritize 100 tasks in a day and be like, this is where I'm at. You don't have to complete everything, but you can
No.
be like, this is where I'm at.
Yep.
And if it's really that much, you can always go to your manager and say, okay, I've got 100 things. Like, I think my best energy is spent at these 90 things. And, people can negotiate. So all that to say, I think you can't teach attitude. You can't teach work ethic. It is something that you build over time. And I don't care if you're, like you said, like your gender, race, etc. The hard work is still there. If you want a seat at a board of a Fortune 500 company, like, you're putting in the hours. In fact,
100%.
this is so interesting. I went to a conference and I spoke to a partner at a law firm here in Toronto, one of the very few Black lawyers who's a partner, and he and I were talking about the experience of the Black lawyer in law in Canada. And I said, "Oh, tell me more." So we have this whole like podcast series planned, but he said, it's not just Black lawyers. It's, if your parents aren't lawyers, doctors, engineers, they didn't work insanely hard. It's exceptionally hard to tell anyone entering our field that, hey, by the way, it's like 70-hour weeks. Like,
Yeah.
you're working a lot. And yeah, there's big bonuses, and yes, like, there's a lot of money to be made, but you have
Sacrifice.
to sacrifice. And what he mentioned is that students and new lawyers not from that family background are at such a disadvantage compared to Black lawyers, Asian lawyers, Indian lawyers, white lawyers, whose parents are like, yep, you gotta friggin' work. And Saturday mornings, you gotta, clean your place, and then you gotta go to the office. Like, if you don't have that,
Yeah.
it's so hard for you to succeed in that industry. And so that really got me thinking about
It's the environment too, right?
work
Like
ethic,
how
work
you're
ethic. Yeah,
worth ethic, yeah. And like you said, you can't teach that. And like
can't teach it.
what's really great is if you do find like a talent that you can be hardworking towards. I think that's when people have success, right? It's like, okay, great, you can sing, but how hard are you going to work to become a singer? Right. And maybe that's a talent. And I think a lot of people, mistaken sometimes hobbies and talents for that needs to be your career and purpose. I did that with photography. I still will think that I love photography. I love taking pictures. I don't have time for it right now. It's something that I love. And so many people are like, you should do it. You would make money. And I'm like, yes, I could cancel the podcast that loses me money and do photography and make money. Sure. But that's not what all world's about. I want to have a good time. Like the girls that I have on for this series, just after you about the Botox injury, they were shocked that I don't make money. And I was like, well, I get that. Canadians don't make money off these platforms, like FYI. So you got to have a big, big, big platform on YouTube or Instagram, but it is very difficult, especially if you're talking about controversy. So I just from the beginning was like, bro, this is an energy exchange.
Yeah.
You are going to do this hard work. You're going to learn how to edit and content create and take the shit. But you're going to learn so much and you're going to connect to people and you're going to be able to help plant seeds across the world. That is fucking priceless, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, and one day maybe I will make money on it, but I don't really feel like we're here to do that. But if you are doing it, you should be taking that. Like I take my job super seriously. So it's like, I do have a career that is funneling my life, is doing all that. So I can do that. And it's just like, but you don't always have to take your talents and turn them into money makers, because it's actually draining. When I did photography for money, I was so drained because it was like the expectations of producing something. With the podcast, like I have not missed a day in 4 years, but
there we go.
I know that's something like
that's
I have
amazing.
OCD. I have OCD. So like in a small sense, I've self-diagnosed with a small amount of OCD, and I just made this commitment to myself that I was never going to miss a launch, and I never have.
Good for you.
Thank you. And I could give that all up to do something that makes me money. But I would miss it so much. Like the things that I learned, like it's invaluable. It's an energy exchange is what I was trying to get to. So it's like, I don't know. I feel like you got to have a little bit of both. You got to have something that is pushing you, that you're building, that's teaching you. My job, my corporate job, I learned so much. I'm so creative with Excel. Like I am known as, unfortunately, an Excel master at work. But in my that doesn't get me to create. That doesn't make me feel like I'm connecting and I'm doing something. So I do this. So it's just like understanding that, like, I don't know. I just struggle. People are like, I'm bored. I don't have time. I'm like, I'm running a full-time podcast. I fucking starting an own business. I'm teaching cardio classes on the weekend. I have a full-time corporate job. Yeah, I started teaching, which I will say, everyone that told me to start teaching cardio classes again, y'all are right. I should have. It is something. But that's where I'm like, that's where I make my money, right? So, you know, one Sunday a month, for an hour, I yell at bitches. They get sweaty and I make money. And that's another avenue. But you don't always have to. Because like with photography, it ruined it, right? So like, I think that you just need to be careful of what your talents are and where you put your hard work. And if you're drained, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. I'm sorry. Agreed. And I know that's hard for everybody right now, because like I hate people are like, just quit your 9 to 5 and start a business. No, don't do that. Be very smart with that, especially in Canada right now. Please don't do that. Yes. But do both. Do both. Work harder. If you want that dream, like you're going to have to work hard out of that 9 to 5. But like, I hate MLMs that are just like, quit your 9 to 5. I'm like, girl, don't. People don't have money for your fucking gross greens right now. Please do not convince others to go into your multi-level marketing. Like, it's just, you hate government, but government is a pyramid too. All of our money's just going up to the top, you guys. Canadian government is the biggest MLM scam. I said it. That needs to be a shirt. That's the next shirt, Christopher.
Funny. It's so funny you say that, because like living in downtown Toronto, I see like the downtown Toronto guy, like typical, I hate to make this all like stereotypical, but the typical downtown Toronto guy starts like a coffee shop or something, and it's like wearing like the lumberjack and like the toque and all that, and he's got like this artsy like coffee shop, and then it's also like a bike repair shop, or it's also like something else in the back, and then it turns into a yoga studio. Like, it's so interesting you mentioned that, because it's like I've seen that so many times, you know, and it's like, that's interesting. Like, and it got me thinking that there's actually, and I'll caveat this, but there's a lot of rich people with nothing to do. And I think that that's actually quite dangerous, because rich people with nothing to do is like, they're like, you know, talking to politicians or Squid Games. Yeah, doing some crazy shit. But to your point about, you know, following your passion, I think one thing that people sometimes get lost in is like energy. And you know, in my spiritual journey, I've started realizing energy and where it can be directed. Like this conversation's so like energy enriching.
Yes,
we've had conversations that are energy draining, and we're like talking
energy
to
vampires.
Like, and we're like, why am I? At the end, you feel so like lethargic and drained, and it's because there's something in the Mahabharata that says the warrior knows which battles to pick, and I guess it comes back down to like, know what hill to die on.
Yeah.
And for like young people who are like, I don't know what to do, like, okay, if you have an idea for a podcast, a business, whatever, and you have a 9 to 5, like stick to your 9 to 5, come home. Just because you're home from work doesn't mean that you're not going to do anything for the evening. Like, spend 20 minutes, spend 30 minutes, like go online, research more, like learn a little bit more about your ideas. Exactly. And like, do some reflection. That to me is all work. And if you can shift your energy, the most enriching thing that you get out of like things that you don't like doing are things like these. And I think that that's, if you understand how energy shifts, you can actually accomplish in a day what most would take a week or 3 weeks or months or years to do, if you understand how to shift your energy.
A flow state, and to get into a flow state. And like, if you think about time, like you'll be, say you're hanging out with people and you're having such a good time. You're like, holy fuck, 3 hours. I mean, you could be doing Molly or ecstasy, because I've done that too. But it's related to that, where you're having such a good time. You're like, holy fuck, I've been here forever. Like same with podcasting. Like I'll get into it and I'm like, okay, I want to keep it to hour and a half. That's where I lose people. And then I'm like, 2 hours, holy shit, because you're in a flow state. And that's when you know you're aligned, right? And when you're not aligned, you're not in a flow state. Time drags on. And that comes back to manifesting your mindset and understanding what your purpose and flow is. And I know I'm in a flow at work because I can do so much fucking work. It actually, I'm like, it's like you can bend time, right? And so it's like, but if you're not connected to that subconscious, if you're not even understanding those things, you have no perception of that time is dragging on. You feel like you're trapped in hell. But like for me, it's like podcasting, anything that I'm doing, like the day just is like, oh my God, there's so much time. And I've been able to do so much, and the days drag on when you don't have purpose and you don't have things to do. So it's like, yeah, you're 9 to 5. Unfortunately, the way the world is built and what we're doing, yeah, you have to do that for right now. So your bills are paid, you're being a contributing member to society. But why is 8 hours so fucking draining? For one, reevaluate where you're putting your 9 to 5. Make sure it's something that you're in alignment with. Because my 9 to 5, some days go by like that. I'm like, fuck, I actually wish I had more days. But I'm not going to stick over. But I work on my dreams at nighttime, because when I'm doing stuff for the podcast outside of making reels, that is the one thing that I hate, which, by the way, I'm using Riverside this season.
Nice.
So Riverside, thank you, because we're doing reels on Riverside this year. We're not fucking around. I'm tired.
I love it.
Well, with my Mac, I don't even know if I can download DaVinci and how to use it. So I'm like, I have to find something else. So now I've gone to Riverside and iMovie, and it has like, and I've also dropped some social media platforms. I want it to be everywhere, and now I just want to be in certain places sometimes with like better quality, instead of like trying to post on all these different things. So and I had to look at that in my outside my 9 to 5 dream chasing activity. What energy is being used in a place that shouldn't make sense? Like, you're just reevaluating TikTok lives. Fine, they were good. They had their purpose, but did they bring you happiness?
Yeah.
Or does doing deep dives and having guests on and sharing those graphs, is that what really brings you happiness? And does time just disappear when you do that? And that's what I had to look at. I hate content creating. I fucking hate it. So how do I make it a little bit less? Okay, less platforms, bitch. And now I'm like, oh, Instagram and TikTok, that's it. This is fucking wonderful. I don't care about the rest anymore. Like, it is what it is. So it's just like constantly, like you said, evaluating where your energy is going. And to the people. One thing to that, when you start doing that, your intuition then picks up. And I don't know if you have this, but I will meet someone and it's like immediately no.
Yeah.
Immediately no. It's like, no disrespect, but immediately you're not coming to my table for dinner. Hope you eat. Wish you well. Not inviting you to Thanksgiving dinner kind of thing, right? And so it's like your intuition knows immediately this person isn't someone that you need to waste energy on. So then you can mentally prepare how you emotionally regulate the conversation. Where I feel like people don't have that. To your point earlier, they don't know their morals. They don't know what they stand for. It's ideological. It's political. It's surface level. So that they actually can't back up their statements. And then it just comes to like ad homonems. You're a dumb Indian, get out of here. It's like, that is not an argument. He was born and raised here. What are you talking about? Like,
It's so
we are white. We were the first people here. What are you talking about? We are literally all immigrants. Shut the fuck up. And that's one thing I also want to segue into, because I also learned this just before, and maybe you know, maybe not. So sorry if that's racist of me to ask.
And nothing's ever racist.
No, I just try to be funny. So I found this thing on TikTok, and I don't know if you follow Mario for the North on TikTok.
No.
I will send you to him. He is fucking incredible. He owns like Throwing Axe, and he's in Toronto, and he talks about a lot. I've shared a lot of his stuff. I'll send you to him. Yes.
I think I've seen him. Yeah.
Yes. Amazing. Yeah. Anyway, so he brought this up, that there's actually like programs, and I've seen this now on TikTok, an advertisement to me that was saying that if I wanted to become a Canadian resident, to pay money. And so it sounds like there's Canadian businesses that are having immigrants pay money, and there's illegal stuff going on. Have you heard about this? I just typed it, but it was like an advertisement to become a Canadian resident, and it was like taking people's money. And I was like, holy fuck, red flag. Have you seen that at all?
I have not, but I've heard like a lot of like shady stuff about getting to Canada, which I think deserves, again, another topic that Canadians really need to think about, because you see, Canada, again, this is the problem when we have low population and high revenue, high taxation. We are so dependent on immigration. Like this country, like, is so dependent on immigration, and we are very pro-immigration, I think, as Canadians writ large. But that to a degree, I think Canadians don't know what's going on in our immigration system.
They don't.
And like the amount of fraud and, you know, like, I hate to be that person, but here, and I made tons of videos on this. A lot of people criticized me. I said, yeah, but I'm still going to say it. But here in Toronto, the clustering of Indian immigrants, South Asian immigrants, our entire, like, you know, Tim Hortons, it's all Indian immigrants. And I know that may come across as racist to some people, but there are studies done on like Tim Hortons and the temporary foreign worker program and international students. Like, there's all types of things happening. I also understand some Tim Hortons franchises do get like partial pay for every, you know, temporary foreign worker they bring in. Now, I want to couch that by saying if I were in a small community in India and there was this program and, I could get out of this place, first plane, I'm out of
Hell
there.
yeah.
I'm
Bye.
out of there. Like, there's no
Yes.
opportunity for me here.
No.
And I'm a young Indian person with really good, like, the fact that a lot of Indian students speak multiple languages, like,
Hmm.
there's no possibility for me here. I'm out.
Yeah.
And of course I would take that. So it's not anyone's fault on that
Mhm.
end. It's actually our fault in Canada for not setting those students up for success
And
because
being honest about what it's like here. They're
exactly
being
being
lied
like,
to.
yeah, like by the way, it's like $2,600 for a one bedroom in downtown Toronto. Like that's the reality of it.
100%. And you're gonna have to
Yeah.
work 3 jobs at, like,
Yeah.
and to the point, it's like, and I don't think it's racist to say, because someone said, like, when you move to a community, you're gonna
Yeah.
naturally go to people that you know that feel
Mhm.
closest to home. So it's like, I
Clustering.
don't
Yeah.
think, like, why is that like a negative thing? It's like, it's not saying like segregation, like you can't go. It's like that
Yeah.
you're gonna go to people that have been
That,
there before you, that you know, that you feel comfortable with, that have the same values and culture. That's
Yeah,
what makes the beautiful Canada a melting pot, is
for
being
sure.
able to have those communities blend together.
Mhm.
But one thing, and we've talked about this before, when you don't necessarily assimilate or try to then
That's
like
it.
work within what Canada is, because you're no longer in the country that you're
Yeah.
from, that's where things start to get crazy, where it's like, I didn't realize that obviously we have crazy driving laws. I didn't realize it wasn't like that
Yeah.
everywhere else. I've only gone to certain places, but I didn't realize that that's not
Yeah.
important. I didn't put those two together, right? Like,
Yeah.
not that I'm being ignorant, but I just didn't think about it. And then people are like, oh, they're purposely ignoring our laws. No, they just don't know. Are they maybe purposely not educating themselves? Maybe. But
Mhm.
like, that's where things, and that's where the division starts to come in.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that people aren't vetting international student letters. Is
Yeah.
this something you've heard as well?
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that again. That's definitely happening. And then also there's like private post-secondary educational institutions that aren't accredited that students get to. And that is another issue. And so I this is what I honestly think. I think the students are literally being used by bad policy because I was reading somewhere, and I should have read this before I joined, but the federal government is now reducing Indian international students. And I think they're actually ending some student visas and kicking many students out of our country. Now, if I were to actually say that, and I should do a deep dive and do a reel and podcasts on these topics, because if I were to say that, and again, remove the politician, remove the party, everyone would say that's a Donald Trump type policy, that's an alt-right, and
Yeah.
here we are. And so that's where I'm like, guys, it doesn't need to get partisan. This is government policy, and all Canadians should be concerned. In the fall economic statement, the government now is openly saying that globalization is no longer a thing. They're no longer concerned about globalization. They're now more focused on domestic issues, Canada first. So interesting that a liberal government
Really? Didn't we
is like,
just send $5 billion to Ukraine yesterday? Sorry.
right,
I'm
right,
just
right.
saying, because I'm from Kelowna. The homeless population is huge here. I'm sure they could have used,
But
I think,
Brandy, we have to stand with our allies.
because he's a big fucking baby. Sorry, just kidding. But like, it just, we're just blow that. But this is where we go back to headlines,
Yeah.
politic talking. It's not real. It's like, yes, that sounds good on paper, but bitches, like, okay, I don't know if y'all are in old school math, but I remember being in math where you came to a conclusion. They're like, where's your work?
Yeah.
How did you get here?
How did you
We're
get
not
here?
doing this, you guys. And then we're just like, oh, well, we're just Canadian. We'll pay for everything we're doing. No,
No.
no. There's
Yeah.
people lining their pockets here, and people hurting and sending. This is money laundering.
Yeah.
Anything with war, in my opinion, is some sort of money laundering. It's not necessary. And that's one thing I will say. You guys might hate Trump, but he's calling for peace. Just end it. End it.
Isn't it interesting? He said something yesterday with Zelensky where he said,
big fucking baby.
yeah, he said something like, because Zelensky was there to sign the rare earth minerals deal with U.S. and get some security guarantees, I think, to some level, and
Pay
Trump
them
said
back for all the money.
right. And I remember after George W. Bush in Iraq, people like the left was like, war is big money and BlackRock is investing in Iraq. Like, you remember this? I remember this was the big news. Like, war is money, Lockheed Martin, da da da. And interestingly enough, Trump said something, and he said, I don't know if Zelensky wants this war to end. And
I
I
don't think he
swear to you,
does.
it just hit me like really hard. I'm like, fuck, man, there is big money in war. And
Oh
like,
my God, the biggest money.
if this does end, like, what is Zelensky going to do to like, he
Fund
can't go
his
hat
life.
in hand around the world and be like, okay, well, the war's over. We need to rebuild. Give me another $200 billion. Like, he doesn't have that stick anymore. So is it in his best interest? So I don't know, like, it really hit me when Trump said that, because it's like, fuck, that's exactly what so many on the left were criticizing,
Mhm.
rightfully so, Dick Cheney and George W. Bush, of like, hey man, you're in Iraq
Warmongers.
to like expand BlackRock's investments. Like, interesting that, like, yeah, without war, what happens to Zelensky in Ukraine?
And where's all the money?
Yeah.
You know, he's had what, 8 years, I believe, in presidency, because he's
His private wealth
completely
has grown.
that, and also like all the money that was spent to celebrities just to go take pictures with them to then stir like. And
Yeah.
again, we don't like war. Ukrainians are fucking being fucked in this, point blank period. That is not a
Yeah.
known fact. It is a fact. I will say that.
Yeah.
But I feel like, and I've watched some videos, okay, just what I've seen,
Mm-hmm.
is that a lot of Ukrainians there are saying like, we're being fucked by our own government. Like,
Yeah.
he started the war and he has not had democracy because he shut down elections, and you can't really have an election when you're in a war.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, is that democracy? Is that what the people want anymore? Is this, you know what I mean? Like, maybe Ukrainians are tired too. Like, does anybody talk to them, or are they just talking to this man? And I, again,
Mm-hmm.
don't like how it was handled. But at the same time, like you said, you're coming with your fucking coin purse saying, help
Yeah.
me. And then you're being fucking disrespectful when the administration is calling you out saying, hey, when is this going to end? I understand. And like, everyone be like, oh, well, he's putting up Putin and all that. Maybe, but he's trying to end the war. Okay. And if he is being strategic in that, however it needs to happen, it needs to happen. It needs to end. But
Yeah.
where's the sympathy? What's going to happen after that? What's the identity going to be of Zelensky? Is he going to even still be in office if this ends and the Ukrainians are like, hey, what's your plan? And he's got no plan because he's gone around and taken all this money for the war. To your point, is there going to be money left over to help? Because eventually things are going to dry up. Why is it just and I agree, someone, the
Yeah.
next Norris said, why isn't America, and I'll say this to Canada's responsibility, to pay for everybody else? Well,
So
we're struggling here. Is that a weird thing to think? Because
apparently,
I'm curious. Yeah, I know. Fucking, this is why. Season 9, we're getting canceled, fam.
we're getting canceled, but
Happening.
it's happening. But you know, for Canadians, I think the reason why, and so I did a deep dive on this as well. But like, the Ukrainian Canadian Congress (UCC) holds a lot of power here in Canada. So this is a not-for-profit organization. I think their headquarters are in Ottawa. They have had every leader of every political stripe speak at their conferences. I'm talking Jagmeet Singh, Justin Trudeau, Pierre Poilievre.
No,
They've
he's
all
very
spoken.
Ukraine positive.
Right. Very like UCC, like all their conferences. And I'm telling you, when I went through the UCC's annual reports, when you go through their policy recommendations and you do a side-by-side comparison, what they asked for, what did the government of Canada do? It's almost completely identical. And what's wild to me, and this is where it gets really weird, I have not heard Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives actually say anything against, like, we should be questioning our support for Ukraine. They're doubling down.
They're doubling down.
This is a convergence of both liberals and conservatives, and this is where I think Mark Carney and others gain an upper hand on Poilievre to be like, well, what are you getting in such difference with Poilievre? He's a career politician. They're going to do the same thing in Ukraine that we are, and I think that's so scary for Canadians, because when we look at opinion polls, most Canadians don't agree with more funding to Ukraine, and a lot of people don't want to hear that. But
And they're
the
voicing it,
power,
though. They're voicing it to him, and I'm so proud of everybody being like, no,
yeah,
this is going to lose you votes. So I'm really hoping he's going to listen. And maybe, like I said, this is one of those topics like
Yeah.
abortion that it's like, maybe I'm not
Yeah.
ready, but you need to. As time comes on, we need to know, because we don't want our money wasted anymore.
Yeah.
That being said, I am a little bit mad at people that are like, yeah, all that money to Ukraine, but not looking at how much liberals are putting in their pocket through the We Charity,
Yeah.
SNC Lavalin, Arrive scam.
sure.
Like, that part does piss me off. So keep going.
No, you're right, and like it is very true. There's a lot of scandal in Canada, and I think when it comes to Ukraine, I mean, we spend $30 billion a year on our defense, and $5 billion has gone to Ukraine. That's whatever 30%, some insane number. 20 to 30% of our defense budget is to Ukraine. So like, I think that's where Canadians are like, this is a bit wild. Also, does this affect us? Are we under threat? No. Like, that's where Canadians are like, you know what, like there's a lot of things happening in our country, like you mentioned, cost of living, that we need to think about. And also, again, this is nonpartisan. This is not like some
Yes.
alt-right, alt-left. We have issues here in Canada that all of us agree with. All of us agree that housing's crazy. All of us agree that
All
our
genders,
infrastructure,
all statuses,
all
all
genders.
sexual oriences,
Right.
all, even animals are feeling it. Even the cats are feeling it.
You know, it's so interesting you say that, because just last week here in Toronto, we had this massive, like 2 snowstorms in a row, dumped
You
50
did.
centimeters. It was insane.
You guys were handling it. You can't handle Alberta weather. Sorry.
Yeah, like we're I don't want to say pussies, but we are kind of pussies. Like,
it's okay. We are too in BC. Don't worry. It's Albertans. They're fucking. It's Manitoba. I will say,
Manitoba.
if anywhere, Manitoba, I think, is the coldest place in Canada that people have to deal with. So shout out to anybody from Manitoba. You guys are strong as fuck.
I've always wondered, like, why?
I don't know.
You know,
it makes sense why it's the stab capital of the world. No offense. Love anybody in Manitoba and Winnipeg, but
no, definitely. Like, I always wonder this, like, you know, if you believe like the Bering Strait, the indigenous people came through the Bering Strait and down through BC, and then they went east all the way. Why did they go through Saskatchewan and Manitoba? Like,
stop.
Why?
No,
you
thanks.
Know?
Stop where you are.
Like, turn around. What's in it for us? Like, why did we do this?
If Quebec is going to be a thing, don't. What are you doing? If you could go back, just kidding. It's like, I love the question that was on the Whatever podcast one time. It was so hard. Like, I've really struggled, and I think I've talked to you this before. Like, if you knew where feminism was today, would you go back and support the first wave? And it's like,
wow,
maybe the first, second, third. After that, it's been a disservice making me have to work like a man and have to have a job and not be at home. And like, the world's just changing, right? And so it's just like, you know, and I talked about this to my nan. I highly encourage anybody that still has connections with their grandparents, especially right now, to talk to them, because a lot of them grew up in such a different time. And I feel like I align with my grandma so much, where she's like, she was heavily against pharmaceuticals, very heavily against, like, you know, like she's goes to church, but she's not about like infringing her thoughts on other people. And like, so to talk to her about the world right now is just so cool and insane in a way, because I'm like, we have changed so much, and I don't always know that progression is good. And I think we need to be able to establish when we can say this progression might not be good, and without getting ripped apart. Like, listen, and people on both sides of the scale, I think what I kind of want to like, kind of almost like end today of what I hope to go into 2025, and maybe you do as well, is coming from a place of understanding each other's experiences and understanding the lens that we're all coming at it, and being able to remove that lens for a minute to maybe put on a different lens to understand what someone else is going through. And understanding that not everything is just so black and white, that there's nuance to people's opinions. For example, I could say that I know conservatives hate trans people, like not all. I'm not going to stereotype, but that's the consensus, that conservatives don't believe trans people exist. Well, I'm a conservative. I would say I'm a Republican, and I do believe they exist. I don't believe that children should have to be put through medical castration and all those things, and people can deny that it's happening. It is. And even if it's 1 or 2 kids, even if it's 10 kids, it's not enough. As someone who's gotten fucking affected by hormone manipulation as a teenager through birth control, I can say through my experience, let's put on a pause. That does not mean that I'm transphobic. That does not mean that I don't think as a child ages that but again, like, why can't we just, like, you're confusing that with expression and personality, like, to say that and then to loop us into these boxes. So my hope for 2025 is that we become curious, that we become more empathetic, that we put our egos aside, we open our minds, we be real, we have these hard conversations, we try to emotionally regulate without projecting onto other people our experiences and our opinions for just a minute, and push past the uncomfortable to get to the basis. And I guarantee you, most of the time when you have a disagreement, is just not understanding each other. And when you come to understand and you talk, even if it's the hardest conversation, find one commonality and work through that, and work through it together. Because if we could do it in our personal lives, in our social media lives, we could do it at work, we could do it with our families, then maybe we can come together and actually build policies and politics that encompass as much as we can of everyone collaboratively. But unfortunately, because so many people haven't done that, they just go by what the government is telling them. And the people that are like, whoa, this is being corrupt, are getting hated on just for being like, I actually fucking care about you and your life. And I care that you might not care about vaccine mandates, you might not care about, but one day it's going to trample on your rights. And you know who you're going to want beside you? The unvaccinated people that started this 4 years ago screaming out, because we will stand even if we don't agree with you.
Agreed.
I don't love extreme abortion. I think
Yeah.
after 3 months, my personal opinion, I will stand in the sand. I don't give a fuck. I have said this many times. After 3 months, baby, that's your responsibility.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
There's things in place. There's tests. If you don't know your body enough to know that it's pregnant, you need to get in touch with your body. There is apps to track your period. I'm not on birth control. I haven't been on birth control for 5 years. Although I've had a few miscarriages, we have not had a oopsies. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can do all those things. It's time to take personal responsibility on what your body does, what you do, and start understanding what your morals are and what you stand for. Put your line in the sand of your boundaries with being open that might move from time to time as new information comes on. That's my hope for 2025. And what I would like to bring to my show is that balanced thought and the hard conversations, though, but being open and understanding that my experience is solely mine and I want to hear what others are. Is that kind of what you're hoping for 2025 too?
Man, what a mic drop. I love that, Brandy. I think that's like, being vulnerable, but also being like, hey, man, there's a reality to this as well. I think one thing that I've learned has been doing something super uncomfortable every day is actually like a superpower. And having conversations that are challenging is something that is very difficult. But what's really fascinating is the reward at the end, the middle
Emotional
ground.
intelligence.
Yeah, like the policy. And so my hope for 2025 is actually to take Open Minds beyond a podcast, beyond YouTube, beyond Instagram, to start to get on, volunteer for boards and committees to be like, listen, I can't just sit with all this information on MAiD and not activate it in some meaningful way and try to like change public policy, or at least be like, hey man, if you guys are going to make policy about MAiD, like I've interviewed enough people to provide a thoughtful opinion on the way forward. And even if it's not with me, there's like 7 people that I know that should be on this panel.
Yes.
That I think that's the articulation of this. And so one thing that I really hope for in 2025 is revisiting the topics that, the media has done away with. So I interviewed Chief Peter Slowly from the Freedom Convoy.
Yes, that's amazing.
And so like, that's going to be cool. And then he really wants to be part of more stuff. And so, that's my
Hook
goal.
a sister up.
Right? So Brandy, when you're in Toronto, and I'm being totally real, because like,
August.
There's a plan in place. Like, I'm trying to get people who are affected by the Freedom Convoy, people who attended the Freedom Convoy, Chief Peter Slowly there, to do like a panel of different opinions and perspectives, to be like, there's a homeless shelter who, operated in Ottawa at the time of the convoy, and they were shouted at by truckers. Like, I'm like, I want that experience because that enriches our experience as Canadians. But I want Canadians to also hear from truckers who were down there and their real lived experience, because that's missing.
100%. Okay, you hooked up with Paul Minder.
There you go. Exactly, right? And just like, let's just go. Like, let's go 100x. Like, what is stopping us? I think
ourselves, our own mindsets.
Exactly. Yeah.
People's comments, the AI bots, now that we know that they're
AI bots. Yeah, I'm going to go back on TikTok after this now. I'm back on. I'm back on.
You're not a real person.
You're not a real person. You don't need that. You don't know me.
Fuck off. But it is. It's 100%. Like, and it is what it is. It's like just learning that, when you're doing that, it's either AI bots, but you're on the right topic. And like, it's just knowing what your intention is. Everything for me is like intentional. If people know what my intentions are, people that know me as a human being knows where my heart is, and their opinions of me matter most, not someone who stumbled across my podcast, clipped something or seen something, or maybe some, and I don't know if that's happening. I hope not. I hope that I don't instill that. I just always want to instill curiosity and questions, and not everything, and it's not in malice or in fear. I don't want people to be fear mongered. I want to actually stop the fear mongering and show people how powerful they are as individuals. And once we learn that collectively, look at the power over the last couple of years, how many Canadians have been like, whoa, what the fuck? Right? Like, there's been so many moments, and that's because people like me and you and all the others that we listed before are going out and saying those things, having those controversial conversations, even if it's uncomfortable. So guys, 2025, this is it. Let's, take our country back. This is an opportunity. It's scary, but fear is also an opportunity. How did we get here? How do we prevent ourselves from being here? How do we get us out of this, like, the situation that we're in? Like, there's got to be answers, right? And by talking, we'll figure it out. And so, Christopher, thank you so much again for coming on the show. But before we jump off, where can everyone find you, just so they can come and find you? Where is all your platforms? Tell us.
Definitely. OpenMindsPodcast.com. I update that all the time with all my podcasts. Definitely check that out. But I'm mostly active, as Brandy knows, on Instagram. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, folks, at Open Minds Pod, Pod. That's where you can find me. I post almost every day there on my stories, on my reels. And then I'm trying to get my YouTube channel set up. My videographer is like big on this. He's like, you need to be on YouTube. We need to do da da da. And I'm telling you, it's very uncomfortable, but it's also very, very enriching, because I think it's so interesting. And Brandy, I'm sure you've seen this, where other people see in you sometimes what you don't see in yourself. And so, having someone to push you a little bit outside your comfort zone is actually the most rewarding thing,
Yes.
because you find that sixth gear inside. So anyways, check me
Your
out
haters,
on Instagram.
your haters see more potential in you than you do.
Yes, it's so true.
So it's sad that you're like, oh, this person that hates me sees my potential. Maybe I fucking should too.
Yes, 100%. Like, I always believe, and I said this before, like love and hate are two sides of the same coin. If you're really going in on me on like in the comments, and you're spending that much time, I've done something inside. Like I've sparked some curiosity of a question you might have already had, and maybe you just don't like the angle or whatever, and that's fine. But there's something
it's a
deep
mirror.
down.
And you know what? Sometimes the mirror, it looks good. Sometimes the mirror looks real bad when you're double chinning down here, right? So it's like sometimes it's like you got to think you're the front camera, dude. You're in the front camera of someone's, sometimes you're like, shit, this lighting, oh, dang, I'm a model. Yeah. And the other ones are like, I am literally a troll. So it's like really just depends on the person's camera kind of analogy. True. But yeah, it's just we're just getting stronger, and it's just funner, and I think it's just going to be a great year for both of us. You guys, like I said, there's so many things that you're doing that I'm so excited. I love that you're going hard on the MAiDS, because that was like a huge thing that I was really upset about, and like and I agree, we've done the talking, and that's this year. I'm doing the same thing. I'm splitting the podcast and my YouTube channel. Channel is going to be Canadian drama and TikTok tea and insanity, and the podcast is going to be strictly focused on people, conversations, connections, so that I can put more out there. But like you said, it is scary, but you got to push yourselves, and you got to be gaslighting yourselves the whole fucking time. Like, yes, I can do this. Yes, I'm amazing. I'm doing this for a reason. Even if no one listens, who cares? Eventually it'll happen. If you talk to any really famous person, most of them have been like, oh, I've been on YouTube for 10 years. TikTok really changed the game for people, but like anybody else, long form content, we're coming back, baby. Long form content is coming back. So we're just going to lean into it. We got to be patient. But again, Christopher, thank you so much, guys. Make sure to go and follow. As always, thank you for listening, for tuning in. And until next time, guys, bye. Thank you guys so much for listening. I truly appreciate the support. If you like this episode and you want to hear more, please follow the Be Real Babe podcast on Spotify, Apple, and Rumble. You can also find me at the Be Real Babe podcast on TikTok and Instagram. Until next time, guys, bye!